Hi, I'm G, this is my art channel, and in this tutorial I'm showing you how I painted a white tulip in Aquamarkers. And here's what I was using. I had my drawing, I had some Aquamarkers, a color swatch, some brushes, and lots of water. So here's my drawing, and you can see I've got some color test down the left hand side where I've looked at various combinations of colors, and I've already used straw yellow first of all in a very small part of the picture just to make sure it's going to work, as I usually do. And what I'm trying to do on this picture is I'm going to try and work in layers because it's a very light and luminous looking flower, so I'm going to try and use layers to get those very delicate kind of tones. Now usually what I would do is put on all my colors and then add water with the brush, but what I'm trying to do on this one is just do a layer at a time. So the layer you can currently see me working on is straw yellow. So a lot of the petals have got this slightly yellowy kind of pastel yellow kind of look. So what I'm doing is I'm putting on some straw yellow, not too much like you can see, and then I'm getting some water on there with a synthetic brush and I'm moving it around. So I'm adding quite a lot of water so it dilutes the color that's on there quite a lot, and then I'm just moving it around into the places that I want it to have a kind of a yellow, very slight yellow cast in the background. What I'm also trying to do on this flower is I'm trying not to color right to the edges. I'm leaving some paper white highlights. Because it is a white flower, I really want those highlights to, properly pop off the page. So those first couple of petals seem to work just fine. So you can see I roll that out to all the other petals and all the other areas that need it. And then I start to put in some shadow areas. Now for this I'm using a light grey, a pebble grey. I did look at using some darker greys like you can tell from the swatches on the left, but I decided to go with a very light grey because again, very delicate, very luminous flower. So I want it to be very light. So I'm just using pebble grey, and I pop that on, and I've changed up my brush so I get a little bit more control now because I'm using quite a pointed size 3 round, and I'm using that to blend the color around and then also transferring it to other parts of the picture while it's already on the brush, and then just moving it around. So I'm getting some very light and very subtle grey shadowy tones, hopefully, across the picture. Now I got this far and I was not really feeling it. I thought I'd messed it up, to be honest with you, but I thought, right, I'll just keep going. So what I decided to do with this big petal you can see me working on in the middle is just use smaller amounts of the pebble grey. So I was going for a much more subtle layer of shadows, and I was hoping that would hopefully rescue and kind of save the picture for me. So I've also switched over to using the synthetic brush again, and I'm moving that around. I've just changed that because sometimes the sable brush, the size 3, the pointy one, it doesn't blend as much of the color and get as much water in there as I would like. So sometimes I just switch it up and I use the synthetic brush, which I think holds a bit more water. It's not got such a pointy tip, you might have noticed as well. I don't know why that is, but it also just allows you to sort of move that color around a little bit more freely than perhaps the pointed sable brush does. And by the time I'd finished this petal, I was feeling those shadows a little bit more, and I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. So I'd sort of got a bit of a confidence boost, so then I roll out doing those kind of grey shadows across the entire flower. And at this point, I'm really only planning to use 2 colors on the flower. I'm going to leave my white highlights. I've got that yellow layer, that yellow wash on first of all, and then I'm just going to do all of the shadows using pebble grey. I've already decided if they're not quite dark enough, I am going to put a second coat on some of those areas that need it. But as I rolled it out across the whole picture, I was feeling happy with the 2 kind of colors that I'd chosen, and the kind of the dark shadow areas that I was able to get, and you can see me switching back and forth between the 2 brushes probably as well. You'll also see me flipping between the 2 tips on the Aquamarker. Sometimes I need that really fine tip to get into some of those very small delicate areas, but then I can use the big fat thick bullet tip to do some of the areas where I need a lot of color quickly, or it's a big petal so I can work bigger in it. So that's what it looked like after my first layer of colours had dried, and I felt some places needed to be darker. So I thought I'd do a second layer of shadow, and because I was worried about mixing with the colours that I'd already put on, the layers I'd already put on, I thought what I'd do is mix the grey in a palette, you can see me using there, and then apply it straight on with the brush. And like I say, my hope was that it wasn't going to blend too much with the layer of colours that I'd already put on. That's always a bit of a worry with Aquamarkers, I think. And as I was applying these, I don't know, it just didn't see, I didn't seem to be making it work how I wanted it to work. It might have just been because I was working on a small part of the picture and it was kind of early doors there in terms of a second layer of shadow, but I just wasn't really feeling confident about how it worked. So after this, I just thought, right, okay, I'm going to stop, have a little look, and wasn't happy. So I just went back to applying the color straight onto the paper as usual, and then messing it about with the brush. So I was taking a bit of a risk that it would blend together as I added water with the layer that I put on underneath. But what I thought was if I wasn't too fussy and I didn't overwork those colors too much, then the risk of it blending with the layer underneath would be really, really minimal. So I just thought, be brave, take the plunge, and I decided to add my second layer of greys by putting pen directly on and then blending it with water. And as you see me add the second layer of color, you can also see me adding extra yellow as well as extra pebble grey, because I was getting a bit worried that maybe the grey was going to overpower the picture and it was going to be predominantly grey. So I just decided in some areas I was going to up the yellow, more yellow content, and put on yellow and grey and blend them together just to make sure that some of the flowers, warmer, as I felt it was dipping into that cool side of the colours a bit too much. And that's just an artistic kind of choice. In the actual picture I was using, it might not have been that yellow, but that's just a decision I decided to take. So at this point I was happy with the petal, so I wanted to do the innards, the center of the flower. So for this I just decided to add an extra color in. So I'm still using straw yellow as my base, and really putting on quite thick. And then I'm using pebble grey for some darker bits. But I also introduced oak as well, which is sort of lightish brown. And just to give those kind of stamen and those bits in the middle of the flower a slightly darker and also slightly warmer browner edge. Because I really wanted those to, you can see them in the center of the flower, but of course they're surrounded by petals, so they are a little bit shadowed. So once I'd done one or two of those stamen, I knew that those colors were working for me, and they were quite rich and quite dark. So I just, again, rolled that out to doing all of them all the way around. You do my usual thing as well, so I don't smudge my work from working, from left to right or top to bottom rather than right to left, and then I'd end up smudging the work. For the center, I just decided to add some pebble grey and just add some water just to make some of those kind of blobby weird shapes in the middle a little bit more shadowed and give them a little bit more depth. And as I add those colours into the centre, and I also double up some of those colours and make some areas darker, it has a knock-on effect on the surrounding parts of those petal. And I start to think, well, some of those are not dark enough and they need to be darker. So I get a bit fussy and I start to put in some more layers of grey and yellow on certain areas of the petals. Now when you pull it out, I decide I'm going to do the background. You might be looking at it and screaming, no, it looks fine on a white background. But in the image that I'm using, my reference picture, it's got a really dark background. So I really thought if I do the dark background, that's going to make the whole flower pop right off the page. So that was why I decided to do a darkish green background. So you can see me laying down a layer again, first of all. So the first layer I'm doing in the background is fern green, which is a lighter, nice bright spring kind of green. And I'm putting that on quite roughly, and then putting on lots of water with a size 8 synthetic brush, and then I'm really moving that all around, starting out dark on that left hand side and then just adding water and moving it until it fades out on the right hand side. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm doing this background in stages, and if I leave a very, very strong line of color, it's going to be like a drying line there, which I really don't want to have. So I finish off blending that section of color, and then you'll see me add more marker now on the right hand side of the picture. Again, just slapping it on quite sketchily, quite roughly, and then I apply again lots of water using the size 8 brush, and I let it kind of blend out again, like I say, trying to avoid the drying lines. Not such a big problem because I've got dark colors to add. Now here you go, here's my second layer for the background, and for this I'm now putting on really dark Viridian and also blending in some Granite blue-grey in there as well. So I want the background to be dark with a slightly blue-green cast that will hopefully make that flower absolutely, jump off the page at you. And I'm putting it in really sketchy because I want the background to be really painterly and very expressive and very washy and watery. I don't want it to have the same detail and care that I've put onto the flower itself. I want it to look a bit more diffuse and not so clear. So that's why you can see me blending a lot of those colors together using lots of water, let it run, getting back runs, not trying to control it so much. And luckily, I felt as though the background I was adding was quite successful. It wasn't quite dark enough in some places, which is why you can see me going in and adding a second layer of Viridian and Granite and then blending it gently with the brush. Again, I don't want to mix it with the layer that's underneath. I want it to sit on top of that layer. But what I'm aiming for is a darker background in places, so you've got that really strong contrast between the dark background and those really lovely, delicate whites of the flower on top of it. So at this point, pretty much finished. Time to get rid of the masking tape. So there you go, there's the finished article. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the whole video and the actual end product. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my channel. I hope you like some of my other videos. I'll post some links for those below, and you can follow me on all the social medias under the handle gmassamart on Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter.